Hey freaks, it's JJ. Today I'm going to be explaining the story behind Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime, which has been seen as one of the greatest concept albums of all time. Definitely can see why, because this is a fucking masterpiece. I'm sure you all have probably listened to the album. The story is actually pretty easy to follow compared to some other concept albums, but if you want maybe a little bit more in-depth information and you want to know exactly what happens, I'm going to give a quick overview of the whole story. So the story follows the main character named Nikki. He's a kid who kind of grew up on the streets, and he's addicted to heroin, and he's really just fed up with the state of the world, you know, the hypocrisy and corruption of the political leaders, as well as, you know, the economic inequality, and he's really just searching for, you know, a purpose in life. And so he ends up getting manipulated by Dr. X, who convinces him to join this kind of cult-like revolutionary group that is designed to assassinate and kill all these political leaders and then replace them with their own people. So we start off with track 1, I Remember Now. This is kind of a flash forward. Nikki wakes up in a hospital and he doesn't really remember anything that happened, how he got there, and he's kind of confused. But then he starts getting flashes of flashbacks, and he starts to put together how he got there. And then suddenly, he sees himself on the news, wanted for murder, and suddenly things just start flooding back to him. So the real story starts with the next 2 tracks, Anarchy X and Revolution Calling. So he remembers meeting Dr. X at a political rally, and he convinced Nikki to join his secret organization that's dedicated to radical revolution. That brings us to track 4, Operation Mindcrime. And so Dr. X is seen as a political and religious demagogue, and he indoctrinates Nikki through the use of his heroin addiction, as well as hypnosis and brainwashing techniques. He turns Nikki into kind of like a sleeper assassin. So whenever Dr. X speaks the word mindcrime, it gives him full control over Nikki and turns him into an assassin. And so whenever Dr. X says mindcrime, Nikki then becomes Dr. X's puppet and will kill whoever he wants. That brings us to track 5, Speak. And this is where Nikki's kind of been in this secret organization for a long time, and he's starting to really believe in what Dr. X is preaching. He will stand up on the corner and start recruiting and preaching basically to anyone who will listen about how we need radical political change and how they can join the revolution. And then track 6, Spreading the Disease. So one of Dr. X's friends is Father William, who's a corrupt priest. He puts Nikki into this church, sets him up to work with Father William, and as well he meets Mary, who is a prostitute turned into a nun. And the album and the lyrics do a really good job of telling this story, so I probably don't really need to go over how Father William is taking advantage of Sister Mary and all that. But the Spreading the Disease, I believe, refers more to the corruption of religion and the corruption of people in political or religious power, not so much talking about prostitution. Then we go on to track 7, The Mission. Nikki ends up befriending Mary, and he begins to see her as kind of like the only light in his dark life that he's now taken on. And so the song is kind of about a scene where he's sitting in his room, and he decides to light a candle for each person that he's murdered. And by the end, his whole room is lit up with candles, and he's just kind of reflecting on how many people he's murdered for this organization, and he's beginning to doubt a little bit the purpose of the revolution, and he's starting to feel a little bit guilty as well. Then we go on to track 8, Sweet Sister Mary, and this is where Dr. X kind of realizes the friendship between Nikki and Sister Mary, and he kind of sees a possible love affair developing, and he sees that as a threat to his organization. And so Dr. X decides to order Nikki to kill both Father William and Sister Mary, just so that he can have for sure control over Nikki for the foreseeable future. Nikki goes to Mary's church and he kills the priest. Easy, no problem. But then he goes to try and kill Mary, and because he knows her and he's developed sort of a love for her, he can't quite bring himself to do it. That kind of breaks his mind control for a little while. And Nikki and Mary begin plans to leave the organization together. Track 9, The Needle Lies. And so Nikki goes and confronts Dr. X. He says, hey, I'm leaving the organization. I'm out. Both Mary and I are leaving, and Dr. X just kind of laughs in his face and says, hey, well, if you leave, who's going to give you the heroin that I've been providing you with this whole time? Because at his core, Nikki is an addict, and Dr. X is the only one who's been able to supply him with the steady flow of heroin that he needs. Nikki then plans to kill Dr. X because he sees this as the only way that he and Mary can really be free of him. That brings us to track 10, Electric Requiem, and this is where Mary really starts to see what Nikki is capable of. I mean, she knew he was working for Dr. X, but she watched him just assassinate Father William like it was nothing, and almost killed her as well. And so she's starting to see him as just another one of these men who's taken advantage of her, and she starts to really reflect on her life and how she can't really trust anyone. She thought Nikki would be the one guy that she could trust and rely on, but now she's starting to see him as just another Father William. She can't trust anyone, and she doesn't really know what to do with her life, and she doesn't know how to get out of this organization either. And so Nikki returns to the church to see Mary. He opens the door and finds her dead on the floor. So that brings us to breaking the silence. And Nikki is absolutely devastated for a couple of reasons. First of all, the woman he loves is dead. Second of all, he cannot figure out whether or not he was the one to kill her, because with all the brainwashing and the mind control, there's a lot of periods of time where he doesn't have memory of certain things, and there is a good possibility that he could have been the one who murdered her. And so he just cannot deal with the thought that maybe he was the one who killed her. And so he kind of starts to go a little bit crazy. He starts running through the streets, calling her name, and he really just starts to unravel. Then that brings us to I Don't Believe in Love. And so Nikki's running through the streets, acting like a crazy madman, and the police take him in for disorderly conduct. They find a weapon on him, and this weapon ends up matching a string of murders that they've been investigating. And so Nikki is arrested and placed in a mental institution as well, because he's a raving maniac at this point. Then we go on to Waiting for 22 and My Empty Room. So Nikki is in this mental institution. He's lost most of his memories, but he does remember Mary, and so he's just kind of clinging on to this memory of Mary and trying to, wrap his mind around who she is and what she means to him. And this kind of brings us back to the beginning of the album, I Remember Now, where he starts to have flashbacks of what happened. And then that takes us to the final track, Eyes of a Stranger. He's now back in the hospital room where the story first started with I Remember Now. Nikki's now regained all his memories, and he's just completely lost as to who he is now. That's just kind of how far he's fallen. He doesn't even know the person staring back at him when he looks in the mirror. Alright, so that's a wrap, guys. That is the story behind Operation Mindcrime. If you're wondering, I believe it was solved whether or not Nikki murdered Mary, and I think they did some, I think when they've done the live show of Operation Mindcrime, they have like a video that goes along with the story, and it shows that Mary actually killed herself. Nikki did not kill her. So that's that mystery wrapped up. Thanks for watching, guys. My next video I'm going to do is probably going to be maybe Mastodon or maybe some Opeth concept albums explained. Also, on a side note, I finally finished my battle vest, so if y'all want to see a little tour of my battle vest, I can do that. I also started on my second one, and I've also started making my own patches, so if you want to see a tour of my battle vest, if you want to see how I make my own band patches, and if you want to see some more concept albums explained, let me know in the comments, and also subscribe to this channel so that you get notified when I put up a new video. Alright, thanks for watching, guys.